What's an NSFW confession you've been dying to share anonymously? Story 1. I met a girl on Tinder and we had a super casual relationship for a few months. We both knew it wasn't going anywhere serious, but the sex was absolutely incredible. It was fun, wild, and kinky. A great time all around. Things naturally ended when she moved away for work. No hard feelings, just life taking us in different directions. Fast forward 2 years, and I'm at my cousin's engagement party. As I'm mingling, I spot a familiar face, her. Turns out she'd moved to the same city as my cousin, and they'd started dating, eventually getting engaged. We were both equally shocked to see each other, but we played it cool, pretending we'd never met. At one point, we caught each other alone and made a silent pact. No one would ever know. To this day, my cousin has no idea, and it's a secret we've both kept. Story 2. My first job at 18 was as a phone sex operator. This was back in the late 90s, and I had a full-on headset and everything. It was all over the phone. Online chat hadn't yet become a widely used platform in the industry. The company even employed male operators. They tracked our average call times, and I consistently ranked at the top of the list. Honestly, it's a quirky little life achievement I still feel oddly proud of to this day. That job gave me a ton of weird stories. Oh, and if you've ever gotten a tarot reading from a hotline psychic, there's a good chance you were actually talking to a former phone sex operator who got promoted to what we called the other side. Literally the other side of the call center. Story 3. When I was 13, my mom bought me a build-your-own sock monkey kit for Christmas. I started working on it, but didn't finish. One night, I saw it sitting there, unfinished, with the bottom open where the cotton was meant to be stuffed in. I don't know what came over me, but I used it. Afterward, overcome with remorse and guilt, I buried the sock monkey in the backyard under the cover of night. Years later, my dog dug it up and proudly brought it back inside. My mom, understandably, had questions. I, on the other hand, had no answers, only silence. Someone replied, "I'm picturing it now. A young boy out in the yard in the dead of night, with a thunderstorm raging around him. Rain and tears mix on his face as he grips the handle of a worn shovel. Each scrape of the blade against the muddy earth cuts through the storm's roar. In his trembling hands, he holds the husk of a sock monkey, a once cherished gift from his mother, now a symbol of shame and regret. He lowers it into the shallow grave, his breath hitching as the weight of his choices presses down on him. Lightning flashes, illuminating the scene for an instant. For a brief, paralyzing moment, the monkey's button eyes seem to stare back at him, accusing and alive. He freezes, heart pounding, the storm howling its judgment around him. To be continued. Story 4. I was banging my wife in the backseat of our car, and this guy on a bike rode by, looked in at us, and gave me a thumbs up. I gave him a thumbs up back, and he rode off. Never told my wife. Someone replied, "Back in high school, my girlfriend and I had this spot outside my house where we'd park her car for some private time. One night, she was giving me head while I was in the passenger seat, and she was tucked down under the glove box. Things were going smoothly until my good friend's sister showed up. She was with 2 random dudes just casually walking by. She spotted me sitting in the car and, completely oblivious to what was happening, started begging me to step out and say hi. Panic set in. I scrambled for excuses, trying to keep her from getting any closer. Meanwhile, the 2 guys caught on to what was happening and burst out laughing, making the whole situation 10 times worse. Desperate to get her to leave, I remembered the bag of weed I had with me. I handed it over, hoping she'd take it as a bribe and scurry off to smoke with her friends, which thankfully she did. Even now, the memory haunts me. It's one of those moments that replays in your mind late at night when you're trying to sleep, and all you can do is cringe. Story 5. My ex-girlfriend was the one who introduced me to the world of swinging. It started with her introducing me to a group of neighborhood wives, and for a while, it was a wild and exciting experience. But then, out of the blue, she broke up with me. Why, you ask? Well, turns out she'd been planning to break up with me for a while, but didn't want to hurt my self-confidence. So her brilliant plan was to get me into swinging, boost my confidence with other women, and then leave me without feeling guilty. Honestly, it was a pretty calculated move. But hey, it worked. Update. Wow, I did not expect this story to blow up like it has, since I've gotten quite a few DMs asking, how can I get into a situation like this? I figured I'd share some cliff notes based on my experience. Don't be a jerk. Seriously, just be polite and have a common interest that isn't sex-related. Being respectful goes a long way. Be in shape. You don't need to be shredded, but ditch the beer belly and work on stamina. It's appreciated. Wear protection. Always use condoms and get a full panel blood test monthly or every other month. Safety is key. Respect boundaries. In this world, women hold all the cards. Your role is to cater to their desires, so be mindful of their boundaries. Hygiene is everything. Shower daily, keep things tidy and hair-free down there, and maintain a neat appearance. If you have a beard, keep it well-groomed and short. Oh, and fresh breath is non-negotiable. Keep an open mind. Be ready to try new things. Some might push your comfort zone, but you might discover pleasures you didn't know you liked. Empathy wins. Avoid the alpha bro, hyper macho attitude. It's a major turnoff for most women in these circles. If this offends you, know that many women have told me directly they avoid those traits at all costs. Ultimately, just be a functioning adult with empathy, a broad range of interests, and respect for others. Story 6. In my 20s, I attended a sex party that turned out to be quite the memorable experience. I was having a great time, but after spending a while in one of the rooms, I got incredibly thirsty. Deciding to hydrate, I walked out fully naked and headed toward the kitchen. I made it about 5 feet from the fridge before a woman intercepted me. She dropped to her knees and started giving me head. Totally unexpected, but hey, I rolled with it. That said, I was still really thirsty. As this impromptu scene unfolded, a small crowd began to gather, forming a human wall around us to watch the spectacle. Among them was this random guy who locked eyes with me, and with all the enthusiasm in the world, gave me a solid, hell yeah, brother vibe. Seizing the moment, I asked him if he could grab me some water. Without missing a beat, this dude sprang into action. He darted off like a man on a mission and came back moments later with a glass of water. While the woman continued putting on a performance for the audience, I chugged that water like my life depended on it. He even brought me a second glass before she finished. What really stuck with me, though, was the guy's face. He looked absolutely thrilled to be part of the situation, like he was a pit crew member helping a NASCAR driver stay in the race. His enthusiasm was unmatched, and honestly, he deserves a medal for teamwork. Story 7. I ate a donut off a guy's dick twice. Someone replied, MVP, went back for seconds. Story 8. During COVID, I moved back home. At first, it was just a practical choice, saving money while things were uncertain. My parents didn't mind, so I stayed. And over time, it became a pretty sweet setup. But here's the real reason I've stuck around longer than planned. I've been hooking up with a neighborhood MILF for over 2 years now. And honestly, it's been awesome. It all started during a casual walk with my dog. She insisted on going over to this woman for some pets. And as dogs do, she completely broke the ice. From that day forward, our paths kept crossing until things took a more interesting turn. Shout out to my dog for being the ultimate wingman and making those initial connections happen. Who knew a little leash tugging could lead to something this fun? Story 9. When I was 18 back in 2004, I decided to make a dating profile, and being the quiet, nerdy type, I leaned into my interests, including older women. Unsurprisingly, my inbox was a ghost town for months. Then out of nowhere, I got a message that turned my luck around. The message wasn't actually from the woman herself, though. It was from her daughters. They'd set up the profile for their mom, which should have been a red flag, but thankfully it wasn't a scam. We ended up meeting in person, and despite the 29-year age gap, I was 18, she was 47, we clicked. We had so much in common, and our relationship turned into something truly special. We dated for a few years, but eventually things came to an end when her family couldn't get past my age. It wasn't easy, but I'll always be grateful for that chapter of my life. Story 10. Back when I was single, I used to live stream on cam sites. As a straight guy, it was a bit unconventional, but I'd get on camera and, well, enjoy myself in front of dozens of strangers. Interestingly, about 95% of my viewers were men, At the time, I hadn't been with anyone romantically or sexually, and my self-confidence and body image were pretty low. To my surprise, the thoughtful compliments, regular viewers, and even offers for payment were incredibly validating. It felt good to know that people genuinely appreciated me, even in that context. If I were still single, I'd probably be doing it regularly, and maybe even trying to make some real money from it. Looking back, it was a unique chapter in my life that taught me a lot about confidence and self-acceptance. Story 11. I enjoy occasionally, once in a blue moon, a soft peck on the lips. Story 12. Before we were married, my wife and I experimented with an open relationship. Typically, I'd go on a date every 7 or 8 months since I'm pretty busy. One of my friends knew about our arrangement, and naturally our relationship grew flirty. She came to visit me and my wife, and we all knew what was going on. One night after my wife had gone to sleep, my friend and I ended up having sex in our spare bedroom. It was fun, awkward in that typical first time with someone new way, but enjoyable. Afterwards, she left, and I went back to my bedroom. To my surprise, my wife was awake and ready to go. And that's how I ended up having sex with 2 women about 20 minutes apart. Definitely the most wild and porno thing I've ever experienced. Story 13. During high school, I was part of a singing and dancing group, and we traveled frequently on weekends to perform across our country and even a few surrounding ones. Once we stayed at a Catholic school dormitory that was part of a larger monastery. The school rented out the students' rooms to travelers on weekends when the students went home, and we rented out the entire place as a large group. Our group, mostly made up of high school and college kids, brought along booze and weed, and we had a wild time partying in our rooms. The room assigned to me was across from the head priest who ran the school and dormitory. That night, I got drunk with a girl from our group, and we ended up having sex twice in my room. We didn't get much sleep, and I had to sneak her out early in the morning since boys and girls were supposed to be in separate parts of the dormitory. Somehow the next morning, the priest commended our group as one of the quieter and better behaved ones. Story 14. Over 20 years ago, a friend and I went out looking for some fun, and we ended up picking up 2 guys. They had hotel rooms at a nearby place, so we went with them. It turned into one of the best nights I've ever had. Not only was the sex amazing, but the guy I was with was so much fun. We laughed as much as we did other things. We ended up breaking the hotel bed and just carried on the floor in the chair. We had a wild, drunken, and loud time all night long. Unfortunately, they were only in town for the weekend, and they lived too far for anything to go beyond that. So in the morning, we kissed, laughed, thanked each other for the good times, and called it a day. We mutually agreed not to exchange numbers. When I met up with my friend in the hallway, we both looked like crazy people, hair sticking up all over the place, and we couldn't stop grinning. We high-fived each other, both of us feeling like we had just had the most epic night. A few months later, my friend and I ended up in another city where we met a cute group of guys. As we were chatting, one of them suddenly got this starstruck look on his face and asked, "Wait, are you from Chicago? Are your names?" We laughed and said, "Maybe. Why?" That's when all 6 of them got on their knees, started bowing and yelling, "We're not worthy," while cracking up. We were so confused, but it turns out they worked at the same place as the 2 guys from that wild night. Apparently, their boss had been in the hotel room between ours and had not gotten any sleep because of all the noise. He was absolutely furious, and the 2 guys had gotten fired. However, both of them said that the sex was legendary and totally worth it, which made us legends to these guys. We ended up partying with them all night. No, we didn't hook up with any of them, but it was a great time. As for my friend and I, we never told a soul about how we got 2 bush pilots fired, but every once in a while we giggle about it to each other. Story 15. One day I was hungover, so I decided to launch the boat and go fishing. After a couple of beers, I started feeling something rumbling deep in my colon. So I fired up the old Evinrude and started heading toward the marina to drop off my dark passenger. About halfway there, things took a turn for the worse, and I had to make a choice. Either shit my pants or shit off the side of the boat. I chose the latter. In one smooth motion, I put the boat in neutral, stood up, rotated 90 degrees, and dropped my pants, positioning myself over the side of the boat. I gave it a good push, hoping for the best. But what came out wasn't what I expected. It was a loud and aggressive fart. Relieved, I pulled my pants back up, put the boat back into drive, and turned around to head back to my fishing spot. As I was turning, I noticed two old guys fishing on the shore, about 50 feet away, with horrified looks on their faces. What they saw was a maniac zoom up on a small aluminum boat, drop his pants and fart directly at them, before turning around and leaving. To this day, I've wondered if they thought I was intentionally targeting them with that fart. If you like stories like these, please make sure to like and subscribe for more. If you have any opinions on these stories, let me know what you think in the comments below. I hope you all enjoyed today's story time, and I hope to hear from you all soon.